everybody. Welcome to the Hallmarkies podcast. We're so excited here to have a very special Heartland interview. We are talking with Michelle Morgan today, who plays Lou on Heartland. And Michelle, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Rachel. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's so fun. We just finished up this week our coverage of season 8. We've been going and covering the back episodes, and we really enjoyed season 7 and season 8. I think are our favorites of what we've covered so far.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of seasons to choose from.
Yes. we still got a lot of coverage to catch up on. We're going to take a break for the holidays, but then we'll be back up and running in January covering season 9. Well, we like to ask our guests on the podcast is tell us a little bit about how you got inspired to become an actor. How did you get into the field?
Because I didn't make it onto the volleyball team. I got into it kind of a little bit in elementary school, just doing school plays. You know, I'm a big proponent of public schools keeping the arts because it's the first thing to go in public schools, at least in Canada. And the arts are so important because you never know, like some kids are not necessarily sports kids. Some kids are going to become writers or visual artists or in the film or theater industry. And we were doing school plays and I was able to get a small part and I really loved it. Like something just clicked. And I got a big laugh out of the audience playing Potiphar's wife in Joseph and the Amazing
Technicolor that's a fun Dreamcoat.
One. And I got a big laugh out of the audience. And every night people were congratulating me. And I was like, wow, I don't even think I had any lines. I think I just came out and like threw a boa over my shoulder. But people thought I did it really well. And I just was like, oh, this is so fun. So I kept doing theater in school and loved that. And then I eventually did theater sports like improv. And I was like, this is just like my thing, you know, because everything else in life I found hard. I found school really difficult. I got decent grades, but I had to work really hard for them. But with theater, I was like, oh, I can do this. This is like, it was natural to me. So I went to theater school. I studied theater at the University of Toronto. And then I just searched like crazy for an agent. I remember getting out of theater school and making 20 packages with like a headshot and my resume, which had nothing on it. It had like all my school plays on it. And writing a letter to each agency. I'd like sent them to like 20. And I remember one guy calling me back from a theater company because I sent them to theater companies. And he was like, so you want to be an actor? No, don't be an actor. He was basically like, what a terrible idea. And I was like, oh no. And then I think like one agent called me back and I'm still with her. She was my first agent in Toronto, Penny Noble, still with her. But it was like 1 out of 20 that called me back. And
wow. Yeah. So how did you hear about the role of Lou in Heartland? Did you just do an audition or did they approach your agent or how did that work?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because people are always like, how did you hear about it? And how did this happen? And the truth is that acting is a job. It's a profession. And most of what we do is audition, like 90% of what we do is audition. And we try to get these parts and we don't get most of them. But, you know, it wasn't like some magical thing. I think that week I had like 4 auditions. I remember going to my acting coach with my stack of auditions and we worked on them and Heartland was one of them. And it did feel special when I was putting it on tape. I remember feeling like a really strong connection because some auditions, you're like, okay, whatever. But I remember this one feeling really special and feeling like I need to get this right because I think I really get this character, or I know I get this character and I just need to get this right. And I remember working extra hard on it, but it wasn't some like magical thing. It was like, I had been working and slogging and waitressing and auditioning and acting classes and working. And it was like, I happened to be in the right place at the right time, but I've been working towards it for a long time, you know, 4 years of theater school, acting classes. And then that audition came. So, because I don't like the idea that people think that one day I was walking down the street and someone was like, you should play Lou. Like it was like after a lot of work, you know what I mean? Sure. And for everyone in the cast, it's like, especially Sean, who plays Jack, he had a long career as an actor working really hard before that role came along.
It's like say every overnight sensation is 10 years in the making.
Oh, totally.
Hmm.
Like it's just a lot of work. But I actually posted it on Instagram, I think. I remember going through a box of my old stuff and finding an old like calendar, what's it called? An agenda,
A planner, yeah.
like what's it called? Like my schedule.
Yeah.
And just like randomly there, I opened it up and it said Heartland audition. And it was just like written one day. And I was like, posted it online. I'm like, good thing I didn't miss that one. Good thing I showed up.
Yeah. So did you grow up around horses or any of
So
that?
I grew up around them to an extent. My family's South American, and they're from Chile. And a lot of people in Chile, it's a very like there's a lot of Western culture there. So we'd go there as a kid and ride horses in the country. And I did grow up in Calgary till I was about 9. So we'd go for trail rides. It would be like a thing some kids would do for their birthday parties and things like that. But it wasn't like I had a horse or did riding lessons. So I was pretty much a newbie when it came to like actually riding when I
Hmm.
started on the show.
Yeah. So you played Lou for so long. Do you ever have dreams where you're Lou?
Not that I can think of. I mean, I've certainly had Heartland dreams, and I've had dreams like that took place probably in the house or on the set or in that environment, and certainly with those people. But I don't think I've ever had a dream where I was Lou. No.
What do you think makes for a great episode of Heartland?
Okay. Well, and I'm going to base this off of uh, selfishly off of an episode I directed this season, season 15.
Hmm.
I think it was one of the best episodes. All of the stories, because there's A stories, B stories, C stories. All of the stories were connected thematically, and all of the stories did come together, rather than the stories being like disjointed and completely separate and
Hmm.
having nothing to do with each other. So I like it when they all come together. And what makes for a good Heartland episode is the same thing that makes for any good TV, is when the writing is really good and it flows, the characters are really speaking in their voices. Um, the story just makes a lot of sense. There's nothing that's like, what? That story is a little, like the story makes a lot of sense. So season 15, episode 7 is called Bluebird. When that
Ooh,
comes out,
something to
that's,
look
I think,
forward to.
one of the best episodes. Yeah. And I mean, of course, it has to have a really strong horse story, really beautiful imagery, like really beautiful Rocky Mountains. It has to have like that Amy horse connection and that family connection.
So how did you get started directing? Is that something you want to do more of?
It is something I want to do more of. I started by shadowing directors on our show. First, just like casually, and then slowly, like I actually like took on full shadow positions, which meant like you follow them through prep and through through all of production. And then I made a couple of my own short films. I directed the series Hudson, which is a digital series that they did based on Heartland. I directed 3 of those, and yeah, and then I just made sure the producers knew this was something I wanted to do, and eventually, after years and years of trying, they gave me an episode, and then this past year they gave me 2.
That's great. That's
Mhm.
really awesome. You and Amber obviously have to play sisters. Was that something that was just natural and an easy chemistry, or something you
No,
had to kind of work with?
not at first. At
Mhm.
first, it wasn't. We had a really weird meeting the first time. Like I flew on a red eye and I was exhausted, and like I just kind of bumped into her in the hallway of the hotel, and it was a bit abrupt. And I didn't know that she was Amy, and she had met the other actress who was going to play Lou if I didn't show up, because I had to fly in on a red eye in a snowstorm and they weren't sure if I'd make it. So it was just a weird, like
Yeah.
everything was just weird. And so at first it definitely wasn't like best friends or anything. We were just kind of like, what is this? Getting to know everything. But over the years, we've developed a really loving, like I do think of her like a sister, and
Mhm.
we're really open with each other. We tell each other things that we don't tell other people. We ask each other's opinion. We like really respect each other a lot. And it does feel like really sisterly. And it's like,
Mhm.
I have a lot of love for her.
We can tell that, I think, in the performances. Sometimes you just have that. It feels like a family, I think, at Heartland.
Yeah, and we feel like a family too, and in the best ways. And then also sometimes it's a bit dysfunctional. Sometimes we spend too
Mhm.
much time together, and it's like we get grumpy with each other, and it is like a family.
Mhm. One question I had in the very beginning, why did the writers move away from the Scott and Lou relationship? Was it because he was
You
on a
know,
different?
that's above my pay grade.
Oh,
We
okay.
don't get to I think people sometimes think that we have a say in what happens in our stories, and we so don't. Like
Sure.
we can pitch ideas, and we certainly
Hmm.
do, especially like after, we'd been on the show a few years and we knew our characters so well, we would certainly go in and pitch ideas. But I really liked playing opposite Nathaniel Arcon. He still comes on the show every once in a while. He's still like a
Hmm.
family friend on the show.
Right.
But I loved playing opposite him, and I don't really quite
Yeah, we
know.
were bummed.
That was a
Yeah.
decision from above.
Interesting. From the author of Miracles and Menorahs and History of Us comes a story about the changing nature of love and what it really feels like to be home for the holidays. Love and Latkes is the third book in Stacey Agdern's Friendship and Festival series. Available on October 12th from Tool Publishing and wherever books are sold. For more information about Stacey, visit her at her website, staceyagdern.com. That's staceyagdern.com. Were you surprised when the show became so popular internationally after launching on Netflix?
Yeah, I for sure, because I get fan mail and social media messages from around the world. I have the a person sort of started forming a fan club for me from Tasmania.
Oh, really?
Tons of followers from Brazil, the UK, South America. Just it's a big show. Like I before COVID, I was on vacation with my family in Mexico, and Mexicans were walking up to me on the beach being like, "Hey, you're Lou from Heartland." Like it's obviously it's really struck a chord. And but now I can see why, and especially when I'm directing it, it's like they obviously they love a lot of aspects of the show, but I think one of the things they love the most is just how beautiful the Canadian Rockies are. Like
Mhm.
our setting is so unique. It's really unique in Canada and in the world. Where we film our show is one of the most beautiful places in the world. But also, of course, like we have the most beautiful horses. Our equestrian stories are really authentic, and we really pride ourselves in the authenticity of our equestrian stories. And of course,
Yeah.
they like the story too.
I'm always amazed by I guess for lack of a better, the performances they get out of the horses, how they
Yeah.
can, without obviously like they had sometimes have to show trauma without actually traumatizing them. And I'm like, how do they
Yeah.
do that? It's
I think
amazing.
that's the hardest part, is when it's supposed to look like a horse hurts itself or there's an accident. That's
Hmm.
that's tricky.
Yeah. Yeah. So in seasons 7 and 8, you have you and Gabrielle Hogan as Peter and Lou have
Mhm.
a lot of conflict that you are dealing with on the show. And so what is it like as an actor kind of preparing for those kinds of scenes?
It's hard. And actually those seasons, I think that they really paid off in the sense that the stories are really strong, but it was challenging. And I remember after work just feeling really drained, and sometimes taking part of that pain home with me because we were going through a separation. And the truth is that Gabe and I at that point had been married on TV longer than we'd been married in our real lives. And we're friends, and we both obviously have our own families and our own spouses, but our on-screen relationship was really strong, and it was painful for us to have to go through that separation.
Mhm. Yeah. I would imagine that would be tough to kind of get emotionally sort of ready and then take it down once you're finished
Yeah,
shooting.
I had to sort of learn ways of like leaving it at work and kind of like letting go of that energy. But I definitely didn't master that. And I remember that season taking a lot of that home with me. And it was a
Mm.
hard season in that
Yeah.
sense.
Hmm. So you and Lisa in season 8 have some conflict. I mean, she's obviously the godmother to Katie, so you have a closeness, but you
Mhm.
both want to help, Amy plan the wedding, and you both kind of want to be involved. And so what is that like, kind of shooting those scenes with her?
It's it's tricky too, but
Hmm.
like I think it's funny because Lisa and Lou, the two L's, uh, they are two really strong women. They're both very successful. They're both really driven. And so it's smart that they play that those two women butt heads in the family because it makes sense. Of course, we always make up and we are close and we love and need each other. And it comes back to that. But it just makes sense that Lou and Lisa would butt heads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Lisa is played by Jessica Steen, who is a close friend in real life, and
Mm-hmm.
she is nothing like her character. She's like the sweetest, really kind, really good friend, really fun, really silly, not proper, and she's not like Lisa at all. She's quite unique.
Mm-hmm. So is it surreal for you to have played this character for, for 15 years? What's that like?
It was surreal at a certain point, and now it's just all that I've known for so long that I'm used to it. But
Mm-hmm.
it was surreal, and it's been interesting, like my kids being raised in it, because they were both born, and now they're fully formed humans. They're 8 and 10, but they've grown up with a mom playing a part on TV and people walking up to them on the street and recognizing their mom, and it's been interesting watching them like realize like, oh, like my mom's on TV and that's unique. Like not all my friends' moms are on TV, and what does that mean? It's been interesting to watch them sort of like grow into that realization.
Do they like to watch the show?
They do. But now because of COVID, I have to be honest, I haven't been able to bring them to work in a couple of years, and they loved coming. That was part of what they loved, is coming
Mm-hmm.
and seeing it and being part of it a little bit. But now when I go, I just like leave them in Vancouver and I go. And so they kind of just think of the show as the thing that takes me away from them now.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not as excited that I'm on Heartland these days, but hopefully things will go back to normal.
When did you guys get to start shooting again after the COVID break?
Pretty quick. The film industry galvanized and, just sorted out the issues of insurance and COVID safety, because it's a huge industry, and luckily they could afford to, right? So both in the United States and in Canada, in the UK, everywhere, the film industry was one of the first industries that really like revved back up. But if you walk onto a film set, it's exactly the same as it was when COVID was like hitting really hard. Everyone's wearing masks all the time, health checks, temperature checks, really strict testing, and like all that stuff. So we're still doing all of those things on film sets, and zero visitors, like no visitors at all. So we were able to do it because we've had these like really stringent rules. And so we started up, so everything shut down March 2019, and we started up that September. Yeah, September.
Yeah, that
We were
is pretty
supposed to
fast.
start in May, so it got delayed to September.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you felt safe and everything was all.
Yeah, totally. No, I 100%. Like people will often say they feel safer on a film set than in like at the mall,
Mhm.
right? Because
Right.
testing and masking, and just like it's strict.
Mhm. Yeah. So what do you think about the show that has made it last as long as it has?
Well, I think honestly, our showrunner, Heather Conkey, who is like behind the scenes, she doesn't really do a
Mhm.
lot of publicity, but she has had a really strong vision. Before she did Heartland, she had written and worked on a number of shows, one of them being a big Canadian classic called Road to Avonlea. And she was doing a presentation to the CBC about what makes a good multi-generational show, like family show.
Mhm.
And she did this presentation to the CBC about it, and they're like, oh, we have this new show Heartland, you should show run that. But she knew the ingredients, it's like animals, the relationships, the families, the music. Has a music background, and so she has a really strong ear for how the music of the show should be. She's not the composer, but she works with the composers. And so I think Heather, actually our showrunner, is one of the reasons. The casting just worked. Sometimes you cast a show and it's just doesn't quite fit. And you see that with shows that go like 1 season or 2 seasons. It's like something about the cast just didn't gel. And it doesn't mean that they didn't get along as people. Like maybe they were all best buddies, but something about those characters. And I think it's the animals and the setting.
Mhm. Yeah, we've talked to Heather. She came on for an interview a couple of years ago, and that was really fun. Yeah, she's very, very creative and such a good writer.
She's an amazing person, and she just
Mhm.
has such a clear vision for what the show is and what it isn't. And people bring her ideas constantly. What if this?
Mhm.
What if that? What if when they're texting, you can see the image on the screen? What if the music should change and be like this? What about this new character? And she just like knows what fits with the world of the show and what doesn't, and is like the editor of all of that.
Mhm. Yeah. One thing that I've always been impressed with the show is that especially for a show about like cowboys kind of, that I feel like the male characters aren't afraid to be like sensitive and
Mhm.
kind, and you see them taking care of Katie. You see them like doing more sort of, I don't know what the word, not feminine things, but softer things. And it's just
Mhm.
it doesn't have any like toxic masculinity at all, the show. And I just really
Mhm.
appreciate that about it.
Well, certainly more and more as the seasons went on, that
Mhm.
became more normalized. And, now we have an out homosexual character. And I
Mhm.
think the show has come a long way in that sense. And I hope that that's true, that we
Mhm.
we are portraying images of like men's and women's roles that are non-traditional. In some
Mhm.
senses, though, it does portray traditional roles, and like I'm not the writer. I would probably make it a little different, but I do notice that like Lou and Lisa are the one. Actually, no, Grandpa makes dinner sometimes. No, he does do it sometimes, but
Mhm.
usually it's the women who are making dinner.
That is
I'll
true.
point that out.
That's true. But I do like that Ty
Yeah,
and
Ty
Jack
does a lot of cooking
and
too.
Tim
Yeah,
all will take care of Katie. All
totally.
right.
And their own
And
kids. Later, you'll see Ty with his own daughter. He was
mhm.
like a huge caretaker for her, and
Yeah, I like that. I
mhm.
think it's good. We'd like to take a second from this episode of the podcast to celebrate our sponsor of this episode, and that is the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast?
Do you want an inside scoop into what happens on the podcast?
Do you want early access to episodes and loads of cool perks?
Now is the time to become a patron of Hallmarkies Podcast.
By becoming a patron, you get to access our patron Facebook group.
You can request episodes or even be a guest on the podcast.
And most importantly, any patron can join our monthly movie watch-alongs with stars like Paul Campbell, Natalie Hall, and more.
It's as low as $2 a month to join in and become a special part of the Hallmarkies family.
Please consider, and we will love you forever.
Go to patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
I'd like to end our interviews with some fun, silly questions.
Sure.
And so, all right. First question: what is the best ice cream flavor?
Oh, anything with a mix of vanilla and like chocolate chunks or chocolate chips or something like that.
Okay, that sounds good. All right. What is your favorite color?
Green.
Oh, good. Very on brand. Good for a Hallmark. Okay. What music are you into?
Lately I've been listening to a lot of R&B.
Okay, good.
Like new R&B.
Mm-hmm. All right. What is your go-to date night food?
Ooh, Italian. Me and my
Mm,
husband pretty much almost always go for Italian.
good. Okay. What is your go-to date night activity back when we can go out and do stuff?
Oh yeah. We would always go for dinner and sometimes a movie, and sometimes we'd go see a concert because we both really like music.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I
Mhm.
just went back for my first concert since the pandemic. I saw Mike Bublé, and that was so fun.
Oh,
Yeah.
awesome. I seen music yet? I've done a lot of things. Like I've obviously eaten
Hmm.
dinner, I've been to malls and stuff, but I don't think I've seen live music yet. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. Well, hey, he's a Canadian, so maybe you can get to see
I know
him.
he lives in Vancouver where I live, but I've
Yeah,
never
there you
met him,
go.
but
All right. Dogs or cats?
both. We have a dog we have a cat who I love. He's
Mhm.
like a dog. But I would love a dog. I travel so much for work that it's not in the
Mhm.
cards right now.
Do you have a favorite of the horses at Heartland?
Yes, I do. Actually, it's the horse's real name is Copper, but he plays Harley, Ty's horse. And
Okay.
I got to ride him this season for the first time. And I was like, this is amazing. I loved riding him. And they saw that I could ride him really well. Like we had a good relationship. So they started writing a bunch of riding for Luke because they're like, oh, Michelle can ride, because me and this horse really got along. And I was like loping around on him, cantering around, like no problem. I loved him.
That's cool. Okay. Beaches or mountains? Which do you prefer?
God, both. That's why I live in Vancouver. We have beaches and mountains. But if I had to choose, beach.
Me too. Even though I live in Utah, I should pick mountains.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right.
I love
Would you
Utah.
rather
It's
would you
beautiful.
rather be in fancy dress or sweats?
Oh, sweats, easy. But like is a moment where like there's something so empowering about wearing a dress and doing your hair, and right, like you just
Yeah.
feel like a new person. But certainly prefer the sweats.
I feel like after quarantine, a lot of us are more leaning towards fancy dress, because at least that means you're doing something.
True, but I'm still a sweats, because like with work with Heartland, I'm always getting dressed, doing my hair, putting on the tight jeans. So I'm like, give me the sweats.
Nice. All right. What is your favorite holiday to celebrate?
Christmas.
Yeah. Can't beat Christmas.
No, it's just the best.
I wish they would do another Christmas movie.
Me too.
Heartland.
I know.
I really enjoyed that one.
I'm sure it's, maybe one day.
Yeah, it would be fun. Last question. What is your favorite Hallmark or romantic movie?
Ooh, anything with Cindy Busby in it, because she's one of my best friends. And she's done many beautiful Hallmark movies. My daughter watched one, and we watched it together, that I really like, called The Christmas Calendar. It came out like 3 or 4 years ago, and I really like that one.
Cool. Yeah, I like that one too. Well, very good. You answered all the questions. Well, thank you so much for taking
time. You must have had Cindy on this show, I imagine.
Yes, we love Cindy so much. We actually just had her on. It will air this week. We had her on for a ranking episode where we ranked all of her movies, her Hallmark movies, and that was really fun. Yeah, she was one of our first, I guess, celebrity guests that we had on the podcast. But do you have any social media you'd like to share?
Yeah, at Michelle Morgan _.
Great. And we'll have that in the description.
That's on Instagram and on Twitter.
Okay, great. We'll have that in the description. Make sure you'll follow Michelle. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. I really appreciate it.
Me too. Nice to talk to you. Take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Michelle, for coming on the podcast. It's so much fun to get to talk with her, and let us know your questions and your thoughts of things we talked about. I would love to hear what you have to say in the comment section or on Twitter. You can follow us at Hallmarkies Pod and Hallmarkies Podcast, all over social media. If you're listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. And if you are watching on YouTube, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Appreciate that so much. We also have our merch store, which has Heartland inspired merch, and we have the Patreon group, which we sure appreciate that support. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. Please take a look there, and make sure you check out our Talking Heartland on Thursdays. And we will start up again in January, but we've got 8 seasons of recaps that you can check out. So thanks so much, everybody, and we'll talk to y'all later. Bye.